And good afternoon and welcome. My name is Ryan Belmore. I'm the owner and publisher of What's Up Newp. It is 2 minutes past 3 p.m. here on Tuesday, September 29th. We are just about 6 weeks from the general election. Joining me again, Mr. Frank Carson. How are you?
I'm pretty good, Ryan. How are you?
How have you been in the last 45 minutes?
Well, I went and I checked my farm. All
Okay.
right, my 3 boxes of plants.
Excellent. And it doesn't happen. We love it when it happens. But when we have both candidates for one seat, it makes things nice to keep ourselves, on topic as well as the candidates. And earlier today, we chatted with somebody from District 7 who's a candidate for District 75. And now we're going to chat with the incumbent, who is a Democrat, and she is Miss Lauren Carson, and here she is. Good afternoon, Rhode.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you both?
Good, Lauren. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Let me ask you, are you sick of virtual conversations?
Well, I think in some ways, virtual conversations have made work easier. It's easier to schedule people because all they need to do is sit in front of their computer. You don't need to get in the car and drive. I've found that I've been able to meet with a lot of people and get a lot done. On the other hand, it does get kind of exhausting when you sit in front of this thing for like 3 or 4 hours and talking. So all in all, I think I like it.
And you're allowing so many more people into your home.
Yes, that's true too. That's true.
And you don't even have to serve anything.
That's correct too.
You do. So you represent District 75, and perhaps there are people who have recently moved into the district. Perhaps there are new business owners. Perhaps people just don't know who Lauren Carson is. So give us a little background about yourself and why you chose to rerun for District 75.
Sure. Actually, there are about 500 new voters in District 75. I've personally been calling them. I was on the phone with about 50 of them last night, introducing myself to them. I'm from New Jersey. I was born and raised there, and I moved to Newport in 1985. So I'm on Aquidneck Island for 35 years. I lived a small portion of time out in Portsmouth, but I chose to move back to Newport. And I originally relocated to Newport. I was about, 31 at the time, I guess. And I chose to move here because I wanted to run and own a bed and breakfast. And at the time, the piece of property on the corner of Mount Vernon and Bull was a bed and breakfast, and I bought that. And I ran the bed and breakfast for 5 years, and then I leased it for about another, 10 years. I sold it in 2000. During that time, I pursued my master's in business at the University of Rhode Island. And then after selling the bed and breakfast, I started about 1990, I started another business with my ex-husband. We owned a data management company, and that was located right here in Newport, and we did medical billing. I sold him that business in 2010, at which time I pursued a master's in European history, which was just sort of a passion of mine and an interest of mine. And so I got that at the University of Rhode Island. I'm very proud of those 2 degrees at our state institution. And so I've worked I've worked for myself for 25 years, 20 years. And I've also worked in a variety of nonprofit organizations over the years. I've worked in environmental organizations, generally speaking. So I have experience in the for-profit, managing them, as well as managing nonprofit organizations as well. On my public service record, I was the president of the Parents Association at St. Michael's School. I was the chair of the Norman Bird Sanctuary back around the year 2000 for about 4 years. I sat on the Newport Energy and Environment Commission for 6 years. I sat on the board of the Alliance for Livable Newport for about 3 years. And I have served 3 terms as state representative from Newport, 6 years. In that capacity, I have served on the Small Business Committee. I have served on the Municipal Government Committee, and I've served on the Oversight Committee. And I've also chaired 2 House study commissions, one on the economic impact of climate change and the other on growing tourism in Rhode Island. So those are fundamentally my accomplishments in my work background. And I have one wonderful son, Andrew, who's 31, born, raised in Newport, and lives in New York.
I learned.
Frank. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I want to ask this question because Frank probably got very excited when you mentioned you were from New Jersey. So
there you go.
Frank is also from New Jersey.
We discussed that, I think. We discussed that once, actually.
I wanted to know why you want to run for another term.
Well, I thought about it very seriously over last year. And I think that what I've observed with being in elected office is that there's an evolution to your experience and your learning curve. And it really does take a few years to really understand what your authority is, what your capacity is, and to get a real grip on the issues from the constituents that you represent. And I think really I'm at the peak of my experience. I think that I have established a posture in the House. I think that folks, both in the district as well as in the legislature, the staff and my colleagues, they know I'm frank, they know I'm direct, they know I'm honest, they know I speak my mind. And I feel like I can really get a handle on a few issues in the next 2 years that I would really like to make a difference on. So that's the reason I'm running.
I want to just jump, if we can, Ryan, to what Patrick Donovan's major issue is, and understand where we're at. His concern was with the gas crisis, concern that he felt that little has been done to forestall another situation. Also mentioned that there were gas shortages, natural gas shortages every winter. Mm-hmm. So those are a whole bunch of questions in one. Is that true that there are gas shortages every winter?
We also thought that I had very limited constituent contact, and I've had 25 constituent meetings in 6 years, more than anyone else. So I just put that on the record. Actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because just today, I was working to get a meeting with National Grid. National Grid, and they're still working on trying to deal with this issue. And National Grid provided to the members of the legislature a 125-page report about 6 weeks ago. Now, I'm no energy engineer. I need to rely on some experts to teach me. And so myself, along with two of my colleagues, Senator Oyer and Representative Cortravan, we're going to meet with National Grid. Apparently, which may be of interest to you, they're going to have a public meeting, I learned today, on October 14th. So I expect that will be announced anytime soon. And it really does speak to supply, and it really does speak to the issues that you're asking about, Frank. So I think over the next 4 weeks, we're going to learn a lot more about what National Grid's plan is to secure supply for Aquidneck Island. And I'm planning on getting a private briefing from National Grid on it.
Is that public meeting specifically related to Newport, or is that a meeting generally for relative to Rhode Island?
What I understand the meeting to be about, I got one email about it today. It's going to be about this report that has been issued by National Grid to address the concerns coming out of the gas crisis. And I think we should hear about it very soon. I mean, I got this email from the gentleman at National Grid, and that's where I learned about it. So that's coming. So I think there'll be an opportunity to see what Grid is proposing. They also indicated to me that they're going before the PUC in December to ratify their plan around supply. So I must be frank, I haven't read the 125-page report. And so that was why I asked for a meeting with the folks at Grid so they could brief me on the report.
And because, your history was kind of challenged, I just want to ask you and give you an opportunity to address it. Can you talk about, constituents reaching out to you, how you interact with constituents, and also if there are constituents out there who haven't that feel like you haven't responded to them, what they should do?
Well, I generally like to think that I respond pretty immediately. I think that constituent services is really one of the top issues that voters have. And I think that when an elected official responds quickly to their constituents, that's what really builds confidence in them. And I actually take a tremendous amount of pride in responding to my constituents very quickly. I've had many tell me that no one answered as quickly as I did. So I know that my opponent made reference to a specific incident on Harrison Ave and that I didn't respond to it. And either I missed it or I don't really know what he's talking about, because it's just not like me to do that. And my constituents can always call me. They can call me at 401-523-1143 or text me at that number. And I think that, something that I often say both to my constituents as well as to the administration that run the departments, That is that when a constituent is frustrated with the bureaucracy of state government, I want to fix that for them. And I spent a fair amount of time during the initial months of the COVID emergency fixing issues for citizens, because citizens too frequently get frustrated. They don't get a call back, they get a machine. And I tell my constituents, if you don't get a response in a day or two from state government, you call me. I'll get you the answer you need, whether it's from DOV, Department on Aging, labor, unemployment, whatever the issue is. And I also tell the departments that when they look bad, I look bad. And when they look good, I look good. So we're all going to work together to make sure constituents get what they need. So I'm very committed to that principle. And I know there's many constituents that would agree with that.
Lauren, when you touched on the COVID-19, are you satisfied with how the governor has handled that, and also how the legislature has really not been a part of any of that, any of those discussions?
I know that you both know there's been a lot of discussion on that topic. I think generally I am pleased with what the governor has done. I think that we're in uncharted water here. We've never had anything like this in our lifetime. I think that she's done a very good job at managing the reopening in an organized way. I think that her communication was tremendous. I mean, we all watched her meetings for months every day. I mean, she really stayed connected to folks. Would I have liked to see the House meet more? I would have liked to see the House meet more. I think that we could have accomplished some things. I advocated for that. Some of my colleagues advocated for that. The decision on the part of the leadership was to not meet and to really leave the issues in the hands of the governor. As you know, some of the committees have been meeting. Finance, I think, is meeting today. They are looking at the budget. So there has been some work that's been going on. And I do expect that after the election, we're going to be very, very busy with the budget. Very busy.
Lauren, obviously there are some businesses that are suffering, if not most, because of COVID and, its impacts over the last few months. What do you do to help improve the business climate for those in District 75?
It's very interesting because on August 28th, Moody's and CNN ranked Rhode Island as number 3 for getting back to business out of 50. And on 37 indicators, there were 30, and you can Google that and find that article. And I read that with real interest. And I started thinking that, there are some parts of the economy that have not been hit that hard. And there are other parts of the economy that have been more severely hit. There are some types of jobs that haven't been impacted. And then there's some that have been impacted. I think a couple different things. I think that we need to get more money into the hands of small businesses. I know there's been frustration waiting for the governor to free up that money. Her rationale is to wait and see if we can use it in the budget in more specific ways, if the feds give us the authority to do that. I also advocated for this to the speaker back in the spring that, maybe we need some kind of a study commission to really look at the economy of the state of Rhode Island, because we know we're in the 21st century. We know that we've been boosted into something very different than from when I was a young woman or looking for my first jobs. And this COVID has really put us over the top, where we've been forced to look at changes in the way people work, the way we're working now. So I don't think we have all the answers yet. I think that we really should be taking a serious look at this. And I would be willing to participate in that conversation. There was something else I wanted to say to that. I pulled up some of the revenue. I want to go back to the small businesses though. I pulled up some of the revenue charts for what's happening in Rhode Island, and the revenue looks high for July if you look at the information coming out of the Department of Revenue. But in reality, a lot of that revenue has been carried over because we delayed the tax payments and we delayed some general fees, government and state fees. So we're starting the new year with what looks like a lot of money in the state coffers from taxes, business taxes, which indicates business is going well. But again, I don't think we quite have enough data yet to really make any assumptions about what's going on. Now, with respects to Newport, I've worked in the tourism industry. I owned a bed and breakfast for years. I chaired a tourism study commission. I like to think I'm a friend of tourism. We see that Discover Newport is changing. We see that Discover Newport is developing and implementing a new business model, which goes along with what I'm saying with respects to the fact that the business models are changing now. You know, I commend them for taking those steps. Hopefully they'll provide some leadership to the businesses in the city about how to adapt to a new business environment. And I don't quite think we're there yet at understanding all the fallout from what COVID has done. But I'm certainly ready to roll up my sleeves and work on it and hear from businesses. During COVID, I did meet with a variety of stakeholder groups. One was hospitality, one was the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, we did listen. And we need to work on that next session, without a doubt.
I'm going to assume that if given making a choice between what Dr. Fauci and the scientists are saying about the virus and what the White House is saying, that you would fall on the side of the scientists. That's
right. I do fall on the side of science. I mean, I was thinking about that question, Frank. You know, I was thinking you asked my opponent that question. And the first thing when I heard you talking about it with him, one of the first things that came to mind was the scientific revolution was one of the greatest accomplishments in Western civilization. I mean, let's think back 200 and 300 years when science became really a key to understanding our lives on Earth and how to make them better. So I do have faith in science. And, you know, I am concerned about the onset of the flu season. I think everybody should get their flu shots, myself included. Again, it's unknown territory. We could have very sick people with more traditional flus needing hospital space. The COVID can take off because we'll be inside under more closed environments and not be outside. There's a lot of unknowns coming on that. So I think to err on the side of science at this point is probably the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, the last part that you said about being indoors, that was Dr. Fauci's message over the last couple of days, right, that we could be in for a long haul here with the virus.
I'm also concerned, and I don't have any answers for this. I've recently started thinking about this. I'm concerned about the impact that being inside is going to have on some of our older citizens. You know, we've been enjoying going outside. I think seniors are going to be less inclined to go out. You know, they're less connected technically, like we are today. And I don't have any solutions for that, but I think it's a high watch issue for communities like Newport that have a very high senior population.
And that's interesting because mental health is a huge part of this that we don't talk about a lot.
That's right. That's right.
Let's see if I can pull off this segue. Speaking of science, the science of climate change.
That was good. It was all right.
That's an easy one.
What are we doing? What if reelected? What would you be working on for climate change? What can we do with climate change?
Well, like I said, I chaired a House Study Commission on the economic impact of climate change and studied Newport. I've also, with my colleague Terry Cortravan, organized the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus, and we've been activating folks on Aquidneck Island who really know that this is a big problem. And I've been involved in a variety of workshops, seminars, meetings, to demonstrate that there's a problem. We see the flooding on the Point. We see the flooding at King Park. We see the flooding at Second Beach. I mean, there's no more studying, in my opinion. I think that the needle is moved, and I think it's time to talk about how to pay for this stuff. And that's where I'm going next year. I was going to introduce legislation this year on it, but we got very derailed by COVID and really haven't met. We met 3 times since March. I think that when we're looking at a green bond, what I was going to begin talking about, every 2 years, we have a green bond in the state of Rhode Island, which pass overwhelmingly. 70 to 80% of the voters support green bonds. So we have a very environmentally minded, voters in the state of Rhode Island. And I think it's time to commit an entire bond to climate change. I think it's time to, I vote yes on all the bonds, all the green bonds. I would do that with one hand tied behind my back. But I think the time has come to really dedicate new thinking about how to finance resiliency, particularly for municipalities, particularly for homeowners and businesses that are along the shore. We need to really dig in And we need to figure out maybe some rotating loans that we could use. We need to think very creatively around finance. I was in a meeting, in a municipal resilience meeting with the city of Newport a couple of weeks ago. There were about 25 people on the call, really examining how to make Newport more resilient. And in my subgroup, it was all about the money. So that's where I'm going next year. Start talking about paying for this stuff.
Lauren, we're in an extreme drought in Rhode Island.
We are.
And is at least the worst in 20 years. Would you attribute that in any way to climate change?
I don't know. There's so many changes we see out there. And sometimes if you do things like that, you're subject to criticism. Oh, look, it's hot. It must be climate change. Oh, look, it's snowing. It must be climate change. All you need to do is look at the North and South Pole and not look any further. All you need to do is look at the tide gauge in Newport, as our Senator Whitehouse always comments, 9 inches higher. Is this cyclical? Did this happen 20,000 years ago? I don't know. Maybe it happened 20,000 years ago. But we certainly have a lot more invested along the waterfront in Newport than we did 20,000 years ago. So we need to take this seriously. And I look at the flooding around the world. I think sometimes Americans, we're so proud of our country, we don't always look outside. And if you look what's happening in Alaska, where islands are breaking off from the panhandle, and ethnic people's lives are challenged. We look at what's happening in the South Pacific. We look at the islands down there off Indonesia that are flooded on a very regular basis. There's something happening. There's no doubt about it. And, I'm trying to be concerned about our little corner of the world, because this is where we all live. So is where I live. And for my son,
Lauren, you mentioned bonds, and I'm just wondering, we have a couple bonds. Well, we have two in Newport coming up in November. And one of them has to do with Rogers. So it's a good in Pell Elementary School, both schools, obviously here in Newport. What do we do with Rogers? How do we improve education? What do we do about regionalization? What do we do about schools in Newport?
Generally speaking, on regionalization, I would entertain a conversation about regionalization of municipal services. Rhode Island has a very strong home rule mentality that comes out of sort of our independence as municipalities. And I know that it's prided by a lot of folks, but I do get concerned that there's some redundancy. And I think that if we could have that conversation and see where we could save money across some municipal services, that would be great. Now, as far as the regionalization of the schools goes, I went to those Middletown meetings. I went to the two a year ago, June, where it was presented, and the Middletown folks really didn't want to do business with us. It was really unfortunate. And so we need a new school. I disagree with my opponent 100%. We do have one of the top 10 worst schools in the state. I have
the Jacobs report from Rhode
makes it number 3.
Yeah, it said it was the worst high school in Rhode Island.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely at the top of the list. And we hear the proponents of the school bond saying, our kids are going there, and think about the impact it has on these kids. If you step back and you say these kids are going to school, there's paint chipping off the walls, there's flooding, there's rodents, there's mold. I mean, that's a horrible place. We have to build this school. It's unfortunate that it came to this, and I know that a lot of people really hoped that it would go differently, but it hasn't. And the money's there. Newporters supported the bond 2 years ago. Why should all this bond money go to other districts? Why should it go to East Providence? They need a high school. That's great. But we got to get, or East Providence or Cranston and Warwick, I know, have school bond questions this year. They're trying to get a piece of that money. So I think we should definitely take the money now. And we should continue seeing if there's any appetite for regionalization of municipal services going forward.
Lauren, there are a lot of people who have advocated that to put off their school building needs because it's likely that the legislature will pass another $250 million bond. Do you have any insight into that?
My insight into that is that we don't know what's going to happen with any of our money. I wouldn't put my bet on anything. I mean, we may need to bond to just balance the budget this year. We don't know what's going to happen. there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty about the state's financial future. I mean, I think we'll be okay. I'm not a doomist. I think we'll figure it out. But I think we can't really bet on anything. That's why we're going to even have the special elections for the state bonds in the winter. You know, the leadership doesn't even want to put it in the budget. They want us to vote on that after we pass the budget because they're uncomfortable with us taking on debt where we may need the debt for other more essential services. Now, the treasurer, whom I admire, has reported that we have the credit to bond, and he's comfortable with it, and I take his word for that. But it's very difficult to know what the future holds on bonding, Frank. We'll know more by the end of the year.
Frank, did you have another one lined up there?
Well, sure. Taking a look at just Newport in general, and the balance between tourism and other development, and particularly looking at the north end, and what its future might look like. As Brian likes to say, if we take a look at that crystal ball, 10 years from now, what's it going to look like?
Well, as Ryan mentioned in the previous interview, that's not my district. So I follow the lead of Chairman Abney and Senator Oyer, who represent that district. But on the other hand, what goes on up there will affect the entire city. There's no doubt about that. And we all know that that's the case. I've been following it, not in super detail, but I have been following it. I've been on a few of the meetings. I've been reading the reports from time to time just to stay in tune with it. I mean, I think that my vision is that it's a real mixed use up there, that it's 21st century, but yet walkable and green without a doubt. I think that there's less emphasis on cars. There's more emphasis on community. I think that the residents that live up there continue to be brought in to be part of the solution. I think that the bridge realignment is just going to dramatically change that whole area up there. And, you know, we have to envision what that looks like. We need to see those schematics again and remind ourselves what that's going to look like, because I think that sort of anchors the rest of the development around that area. And I think it's going to be a big success. I really have complete confidence in it. I think that the people that are working on it, they're working on the zoning, they're working on the community agreements. I think they're doing a great job. I think it's the biggest project in Newport in a generation. And I'm really glad they're working on it, doing a good job. I have confidence in it.
Frank's question here: what role can the legislator play to improve race relations in Rhode Island? Do you see, feel, think that there is an issue with systemic racism? You know, what can we do about race relations?
Is that, Ryan, was that you asking the question or the dog?
A couple things have happened to me personally in the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm going to share. I prepared to share them with you and the viewers. I'm a big fan of Law and Order, and you know we've been in the house a lot, watching stuff on Netflix and everything, and I've been watching all the old Law and Orders. I grew up outside New York. I know Manhattan really well, and I'm watching these Law and Orders that are like 20, 25 years old, and they're talking about young black men being killed in the street. I'm thinking to myself, wow. It's 25 years ago they were talking about this. I mean, I know it's happened intellectually, but I'm watching it. And then what I did was I was preparing for this interview, and I went online to look at closing remarks and how to make closing remarks, which I actually didn't prepare that well. But the thing that I got out of researching closing remarks was I saw Gregory Peck's closing remarks in To Kill a Mockingbird. And that was done 50, 70 years ago. And here was a black man who was accused of rape just because he was black. And I watched this thinking to myself, my goodness, you know, I know intellectually this has been going on, but now that I really see it through different eyes, as being a legislator, having some authority and power to change it, it really had an impact on me, those two fictitious stories in art. I I think I'm voting to take plantations out of the name of Rhode Island. I know that it lost severely some time ago. I know that it doesn't really mean as much as a lot of people think it means, but we have to do it. The time has come. We have to take that small symbolic step that will mean a lot to a lot of people. We have to think about the police culture. I heard your conversation earlier, Frank, about Camden and what defunding the police meant there. I think that it's a healthy conversation to have about rethinking the culture of police. I think what we've witnessed in the past 5 or 6 months has been, I'm hoping that it has really moved the needle on this conversation. And I think it's time to get the African-American history into classrooms. I know the city council passed a resolution in July asking us to make sure that that happens. I would certainly introduce that and co-sponsor that if some of my colleagues want to do that. And I'm also a big supporter of the Slavery Medallion Project, which couldn't be more timely. Charles Roberts is putting the medallions around the state, indicating locations around Rhode Island where historic incidents have occurred with slaves. There are steps we can begin taking, and I'm a big supporter of them. I think what we saw this summer was really striking for me, and I'm ready to work on those things.
Lauren, I want to thank you because we have done lots of interviews. We've asked that question of a lot of people, and I think you're pretty much the first one who has, I think, hit the nail right on the head.
Thank you.
Terms of what has to be done, and it's clear that you're passionate about the issue. Really important, I think. Inject my own personal opinion. Just really important.
Time's come. The time has really come, really, and it's not going to be quick to fix this. I mean, if we really embrace this, it could take a whole generation at least to just sort of really transition our thinking. But we just have to do this.
Frank?
Yeah, but let me jump to another, bunch of other issues here. But do we have adequate affordable housing in Newport?
Well, that's a good question. Let me look at my notes on housing. We have more than the state goal. I know you know that. Not a required amount. It's just a goal. So we have more than that. Housing is a complicated issue, right? We have the real estate industry that thrives on price of housing going up. It supports the whole industry. We have very limited space to build in Newport. We have old housing stock that needs investing. You both know we see families leaving. We're trying to bring them back. There's not one specific answer for this. There is a housing bond that we'll consider putting on the ballot in the winter. And that's going to, I think, renovate 2,000 units. Because a lot of the low-income housing that was built, say, in the 60s and maybe 70s is 50 years old now. So we need investments in rehabilitation. That's probably what we need in Newport right now. And then, we have that North End. That's the biggest place that we can build housing. And I think that as the city council debates this and the zoning and planning board, they have to take a very serious look at putting some moderate and low income housing in that open space, because we don't really have anymore. So I'm voting for the bond. Now, a plug for that bond, the housing bond, there's a small amount of money in the housing bond, about $5 million for capital asset improvements for the arts community. And that would be Island Moving Company, Newport Art Museum, and a variety of other art institutions, capital projects across the state. And I'm working with them to try to see if we can get that up to $10 million, because we also need investments in the capital assets that our arts communities own, because art is good for the community and there's jobs there. So I'm behind the housing bond for more than one reason.
Lauren, I was going to ask you what you think the 3 biggest issues your average constituent has right now, or the biggest concerns your constituents have, but maybe I can turn a frown upside down and make it a positive one. And, what opportunities do you think are out there? What are you hearing from constituents? What do you think is on top of mind day to day for constituents of Newport?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't been able to do all the campaigning that I would have liked to do. I'm not going door to door. I am calling voters. I've had a few digital meetings. I'm doing my best to keep my ear to the ground. but it came to, I made my mind up about a week ago, pardon me, that I think the most important thing that has to happen now is that we have to all work collaboratively. I think that we, myself included, are so tired of the divisiveness in the city. There's less in Newport, though, but in the country, I mean, people are concerned about where this country's going, the kind of leadership that it's under. I spoke to a constituent last night who was concerned about our institutions, what's going to happen with them. I think there's real anxiety out there. So I think that, and I'm going to make this promise to constituents that I'm going to work collaboratively if I win. I'm going to work collaboratively with my colleagues. I think that we have to figure out a course forward to rebuild confidence in people that we are working together and moving in the same direction. So that's kind of the conclusion I came to last week, that, yeah, climate change is important, and, you know, dealing with racism and the housing and balancing the budget, passing the bonds, all those things are, you know, dollars and cents things and socioeconomic issues. But we have to really instill confidence, I think, that our country is together and moving in somewhat the same direction. And so that's what I'm going to do.
You know, one of the big criticisms of the General Assembly has been its lack of minority representation. How big a problem is that, or is it a problem in your mind? Are Democrats basically representing all sides of issues?
Well, there are many spectrums to the Democratic Party in Rhode Island. You must not forget that we have very progressive Democrats. They just really did a wonderful job for themselves at picking up a lot of seats in the Senate, not quite as many in the House. And then we have very conservative Democrats who don't really agree with large parts of the Democratic platform. So, as I'm always told, the Democratic Party is a big tent and welcomes a wide variety of people. So there is more of a give and take than you would think, because of the fact that the Democratic Party is so widespread in its opinions. The minority party is small, but they're vocal. They get their point across. Our minority leader, Felipe, who's a friend of mine, is a smart man and doesn't let anything go by him. And he does a good job, I think, for his party, holding the leadership's feet to the fire and representing his own districts. So I think that there's more diversity of opinion there than people actually realize. And I think that if we're going to change that, it's going to be another generational thing, because there's a lot of older voters that remember sort of the glory days of the old Democratic Party, sort of the JFK party, and they're still kind of hanging on. And I think, and I just commented recently to a senior member of the House staff that the Democratic Party really needs to take a look in the mirror and figure out in Rhode Island exactly how it's going to bring these different opinions together. So there's more diversity there than you think, Frank.
Frank brought it up earlier, and I'm not sure if we touched on it enough, but the age-old question we see every time a new hotel gets approved and built, and I know you've done a lot, tourism, hospitality, do we have enough? Is there too much? How do we balance the act between tourism and hospitality and residents?
Good question. There's lots of different points there. The first point there, of course, is the Airbnb question. And I had introduced, not this year because we ran out of time, but the year before, I introduced a registration system for Airbnbs, because one of the big problems is that we don't know where they are. And if you don't know where they are, they pop up on the street. And if you don't know where they are, then you can't regulate them. So, and Airbnb has been very successful around the country at being a real bully at stopping any kind of regulatory action over them. But they have set up registration systems, most notably in Boston, I think, in New York, and in other places around the country. So I'm going to reintroduce that bill next year. I'm going to keep that conversations going, largely because the city council is still talking about it. The planning committee is still talking, the planning board in town is still talking about it. So we need to keep that conversation alive. I'm going to do that. I think that, again, I'm going to make reference to the fact that Discover Newport is changing their strategy. And I actually suggested to some leaders of the city council last week that now could be the time to rethink tourism in Newport. Now could be the moment. You know, this is a transitional moment. We have our marketing institution altering what it does. We could really talk about Newport in a new way. We could almost rebrand it. We could incorporate those concerns that the neighborhoods have and really take control over the future of tourism. And what I mean by that is, and this is really off the top of my head, you know, like we put a message out there about parking and walking and biking and really move that needle so that there's less cars in town. And we do it all in a positive way. You know, I'm assuming tourism will pick up. I mean, the beach did really well. We saw those numbers this week. There were people coming into town. But, you know, I think that it's an opportunity to change the message and address some of the concerns that the neighborhoods have. You know, the neighborhoods are not wrong. It's a different balance. But on the other hand, I want to say this, you know, that having this tourism economy creates wonderful opportunities for the community to participate in fantastic events, which we couldn't have this year. I mean, you can't beat the Folk and Jazz Festival and the Music Festival. I mean, you can't beat them. They're fabulous events. We love them too. So there is a plus and a minus side to this whole thing. And again, creating balance. And I offered to help, you know, this particular city council member. I said, if you want to talk about this, I'm willing to do it. Because again, we're at this juncture point with COVID where we could really make some positive changes in things. And it could be a once in a generation opportunity.
Lauren, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, which was regionalization of municipal services. When I look at from state to state, many of them have very strong county government.
Yes, that's true.
New Jersey, Maryland, New Hampshire. And that's a regionalization of services. In New Jersey, the county operates roads. They have a police department. They have hospitals. Where do you see that going in Rhode Island? And do you think there is an appetite for that in the state, or a fear on the part of municipalities of losing some of their control?
I think you're right. I think there's a fear of losing their control. And I think it's cultural too. I think that the municipalities have enjoyed this home rule mentality. I say that in a positive way for many, many, many years. I think somebody's got to talk about it. I don't know if I would actually pick that mantle up and make it a top issue of mine, but I think we need to talk about it. And I think that if we got people to the table, we need to demonstrate that, you know, they'd still have authority and they'd still get money and they could manage their city more effectively. That's what you have to prove. That's what you have to prove.
I think we're also wasting a tremendous amount of money by not regionalizing services. Just a real fast story. When I first came here to work for the Providence Journal, I worked in the Greenville office when we had offices. Mm-hmm. And in the little village of Chepachet, on one side of the street was the state police barracks. On the other side of the street was the municipal police building, where they had 2 police officers for the town. If they had combined services, there would have been a considerable savings. And I always have that image, but we haven't gotten there yet.
No, we haven't gotten there. Well, I think there is some shared stuff that goes on between Newport and Middletown, like a little bit. I don't know it all. I don't know their budgets that closely, but they did some stuff with the public works of the school departments, and they do a few things that's maybe save some money, maybe a little experimentation with it.
Lauren, I'm going to ask you a question that usually Frank sneaks in much earlier, but he's off the ball on this one today. Just what is your position with the car tax?
Yes, of course.
I've been thinking about the car tax the past couple of days. Got lots of time to think about it when I go back to work, let me tell you. And I was in a conversation with some of my House colleagues, and they were uncomfortable with promoting the car tax under the current economic climate, and that there were so many other greater human needs based on COVID. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I thought the car tax really does provide money to some people who own cars. So if you have a car, you're actually going to save money. I thought to myself, it's not that crazy an idea. You know, I know that in Newport, we have less dependence on the car tax. Now, in places like Providence and Cranston, there's a much higher dependency on the car tax. People pay $500, $600, $700, $800 a year on car tax. So that's a chunk of change for somebody to get cash in hand in their pockets. But my outlook on the budget, which is really the broader question here, I think my opinion of the budget, my philosophical approach to it, and I'm not on the finance committee, so I don't know how much impact I'll have on it. But what I will say to people when asked is that I think the budget has to be give and take. Again, we're in a period of complete uncertainty like we've never experienced before in our lifetimes. And we have to give some things and we have to take some things. So I think that, everybody won't be happy with it. Everybody may give a little something. Everybody may get a little something. And I genuinely feel if we approach it that way, we might come out in a place where we could get through this budget year not completely scathed. So that's my general thinking on it. How I will vote on it depends on the rest of the budget. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, there are other greater human needs. There's no doubt about that. I want to make sure the aid to municipality holds and school funding holds, the other cash issues, because the car tax, Newport's not that reliant on the car tax. We're more reliant on other forms of municipal support. So
I just wonder if the state has the ability to sustain reimbursing all the cities and towns for lost revenue.
You're right. It does seem as though the Speaker of the House is pretty committed to it. So I don't think there's changing his mind on it, to tell you the truth. He is committed to it, as I'm sure you both see.
And that brings another quick question. Are you supportive of the Speaker?
Well, as you probably know, I didn't vote for him last year in 2019. And I was part of the Reform Caucus. And the intention of the Reform Caucus was to really make a statement about reforming the rules of the House. We were able to make some very small changes, and there are more rules to change. There's no doubt. I feel strongly about that. So, there are some people in town that as soon as I made that vote and they read about it, they were like, yeah, you did the right thing. Stand up against those bullies in Cranston and Providence. Yeah, strangers telling me this. And then I had people saying to me, look what you did. Now Newport's not going to get anything because he controls all the purse strings and he's mad at you. So my constituents are split. They're almost 50-50, to tell you the truth. Some people want me to stand up and some people want me to support the current Speaker. And I think that I don't regret being in the Reform Caucus. I feel that it was part of my evolution as a state representative that I spoke about in my opening remarks. I think that I demonstrated that I'm independent because I don't always vote with the Reform Caucus and I don't always vote with Nick Mattiello. I vote the way I vote. And I think that being part of that has really empowered me to be a more independent legislator, which I do know my constituents want. So will I support Nick? Nick has a few things on his plate. He has a lawsuit next week against one of his campaign workers. We don't know what's going to happen. He may lose. There's a lot of things up in the air yet. This time of year is very uncertain. I think the first thing is I would like to figure out a way to support his budget, and then we'll take the supporting him for Speaker as the second.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the election. It'll be very interesting to see his election in Cranston.
Without a doubt. I mean, if he loses, he'll be heading the House in November when we're passing the budget. That's practically unheard of. It's going to be the next 2 months in Rhode Island are going to make history, I think.
Yeah, in the country.
Yeah, well, yeah, without saying.
Actually, and you just reminded me of it, one of the places where you and the Speaker did agree on was a recent bill that would permit the sale of alcohol to go through the end of next year. You were a co-sponsor on the bill. Just want to speak to why you chose to sign on and support that?
I can tell you that. I thought hard about that. I got the opportunity to sign it and I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm not sure Newporters are going to like this. People they're walking around drinking. What kind of a mentality does that create on the streets? But then you have the restaurants, and the restaurants need the revenue. We've spoken about the impact that COVID has had on different sectors of the economy. And that's where I go back to this give and take thing. There are some things that we're going to do that some people aren't going to like and that you're going to benefit from. And then there's going to be some things that you don't like that other people are going to benefit from. So I did it because taken in isolation, it's an okay decision, but taken in the context of a broader set of decisions that we'll make to really assist other parts of the economy, I think it's a smart decision. I have heard from people, and it's something that I was concerned about the trash that's created by this, because we have lots of takeout all over the street, right? People walking around with containers, and that is a problem. And I understand that. And that was one of my concerns about voting against it, because as you both know, I have a background in environmental management, and trash is a big problem in the state of Rhode Island and in Newport. And I wanted to take this opportunity to call upon restaurants to put garbage receptacles out. I mean, not trash cans that are ugly and unsightly, but this is where the give part is. You see, we're going to give you the opportunity to make money on extending the drink takeouts, but can you help us collect the trash? And I think that that's a win-win for the city. That's a win-win for the restaurants. So if there's any restaurant owners and managers watching, please pitch in and help to collect some of the waste. I think that would go far to make Newport a cleaner city, which we all want. And it would demonstrate that you're really trying to pitch in while we're trying to help you.
Frank, what do you got?
I think, we've covered an awful lot. And, I guess my only last question would be really if there were anything that we've missed, but what your top priorities are going into this legislative session.
Right. So I told you that I'm going into it a little bit with a headset of really being more collaborative. Climate is going to be one of my top priorities, really trying to raise the issue of funding, because I know that the city leadership wants that. I've heard the city manager talk about that. It's about getting money here to fortify our waterfront and our homes and our tax base fundamentally. And I'm really a generalist, Frank. I have a lot of interest. I have a pretty big appetite for issues. I'm going to reintroduce some bills that didn't get anywhere this year, which included advanced recycling and composting in schools and collection of leftover food for food pantries. I'm going to reintroduce a bill which would require some FEMA training for elected officials. Coming off the heels of the gas crisis and COVID, we probably could use some help. I'm going to see what comes up on the racism stuff. One of my colleagues and the speaker does have a bill on looking at the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. I think that's important. Aging in community is always important for Newporters. I have a couple little projects that I took on this year, which are kind of esoteric in nature. One is I was approached by the Historic Cemeteries Commission for the state to really take a step in preserving our historic cemeteries. I have a master's in history, as I said, so this was easy for me. Apparently, there's thousands of historic cemeteries in the state, and I was very close to getting a study commission on that so that we could begin to look at the condition of our historic cemeteries statewide, putting more resources into them. So it's kind of an esoteric topic, but it really does speak to our historic heritage and the whole Roger Williams story and really maintaining that part of our history. So I'm going to definitely, and the historic cemetery folks really don't have an advocate. And the speaker was very interested in it. He was encouraging me to go forward with the study commission. So, and certainly benefits Newport to see if we could get more resources here and maintain those cemeteries. I've also begun working with the parents of special education students. I was approached by some of them to really take a look at the needs of special ed students, whether or not their IEPs are being implemented. And I had a really good bill in on that to create an ombudsman for the parents. And that was heard actually the last day we met in March. And the parents of special ed kids around the state really want me to continue this. So I have some stuff left over from previous sessions and a few new things. And then, of course, whatever the city wants. The city comes to us and asks us to introduce this or that on tax law or funding. And I'm always available for the city council.
Lauren, is there anything we missed today?
I don't think so. The bridge. How about we talk about an update about the realignment of the Newport Bridge?
Yeah, sure. Big one.
Yep. The DEM has done the soil evaluation because before they can rebuild part of their regulatory authority is to evaluate the condition of the soil. And the soil does have contaminants in it, and they are finding ways to deal with that soil remediation where the bridge will be. Excuse me. Also, they're in the final phase. The DOT is in the final phase of the final plan. They're planning on holding a special, not a special, they're planning on holding the community meeting sometime this fall, something else for you guys to look forward to. And after that, the plan will be finalized, and they're going to put the RFP out to hire the contractor. And they expect that the work will start in the spring, and it will take 4 to 5 years. And that's hot off the press today.
Very.
I know that people are interested in that.
Yeah, that's very interesting and exciting information. One question, any beef with the Progressive Party?
Not really. Not really. They're my friends.
They would seem to go along with the reform movement, right?
Oh, yes. Well, they were very, very, central to the reform movement. It seems as though there's going to be a bigger fight on with the progressives on the Senate side than on the House side. So this year we're going to avoid that fight. But
well, already they've lost 2
yes.
Major positions
Yes.
on the Senate side that got lost to progressives. So
and there's more women now than men, from what I'm told. So I think that's where the spotlight will be, on the progressive versus the centrist fight in the Democratic Party. Although we haven't seen the results of the November election yet for the House members, but I don't think we're going to see as much of a shift on the House side. And I agree with them on many, many things. I don't agree with them on everything, but that's where I've sort of come to carve my more independent thinking.
So, Lauren, I actually have one more question.
Frank, I'm just so I can clarify that, because some people might not watch 2 hours of videos. Your opponent had said that he had heard from the Progressive Party, and they had supposedly asked him to run against you, and that's why I asked if you had a beef.
I find that hard to believe. I maybe they did, and I'm surprised, really, because I am with them.
And just wanted to clarify that in case people are wondering why I asked.
Thank you, Ryan.
Here's my last question. So I like to follow the money, and I'll take a look at public financing, the political financing. And the state is owed in fines, or Board of Elections is owed in fines north of $4 million on people that have not filed their financial reports, or people that have been late in filing their financial reports, have not paid the fines, not made arrangements, and the interest has accumulated. I know that they have a difficult time going to court and getting that money back, and that they negotiate portions of it. But what always struck me is that there are people who owe thousands of dollars in fines who are still running for office. And I know that the governor, I believe, in the past has had legislation introduced to develop some kind of a threshold. Where are you with that whole issue?
I don't really know a lot about that issue, to tell you the truth, Frank. I don't think it's wrong. I mean, I think you should file your reports on time. I mean, let's start with like the basic law here.
Right.
File our reports. I file mine on time. Once in my entire history, I filed maybe 20 reports over the past 6 years. I was late once by like a day, and it was a $25 fine, and I paid it immediately. I mean, I feel like that's like I take it very seriously. It's somewhat a sacred transparency that we have with voters to see where our money's coming from and how it's being spent. I would support reform on that, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Lauren, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they go for more information, or if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, LaurenCarson.com. It's pretty easy. All my bills that I've introduced are there. I've done a lot of videos this election season. Most of them are there. How to vote is there. There's a screen just for how to vote, in case you don't know the mail-in ballots, the in-person voting, or November 3rd. And you can always call me, 401-523-1143. And talk to me before you vote. I'd love to hear from you.
Have you filled out your census?
I did that. And fill out your census. I did mine. Fill out your census, of course.
Big issue.
I told Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea I'd ask everybody. So here I am.
I did mine months ago, actually.
Excellent.
Thank you both.
Of course. Frank, did you have anything else?
No, I was hoping that we'd touch on the census. We, depending upon who you're listening to, it's either October 5th is the deadline or the end of October.
Yeah.
So do it today.
That's right.
Do it today. Just Google Rhode Island Census. You can find all the information you need there, or get in touch with one of us, any of us, and we'll help you find the information.
And
Absolutely.
deadline to register to vote, I believe, is October 4th.
This Sunday.
Yeah.
This Sunday. All right, Lauren, if you don't have anything else, I think we are good. We really thank you for joining us again. Rep Carson is District 75, Newport, and is looking for your vote in November in the general election.
Thank you both. Thank you,
Lauren.
Thank you, Rep. You too. All right, Frank, and that is going to do it for us. We have completed District 75, Newport.
Very interesting. Lots of contrast. People should take a look at it and make a decision.
Both videos are up now. Both candidates for District 75 up on our website, whatsupnewp.com, as well as on our Facebook page. Take the time. I know they're a little long. You can move the needle and move it around and find the issues that matter to you. And we encourage everybody to pay attention and take a look.
There you go.
All right, Mr. Prosnitz, we will start this. We'll start another race here in the next couple of days.
More to come.
All right.
Thank you, Ryan.
See you, Frank. On behalf of Frank Prosnitz and myself and all of us here at What's Up Newp, we want to thank Rep. Lauren Carson for joining us here today. If you missed any portion of the video conversation, you can scroll forward, backward, and watch the entire thing. It's available up on our website, whatsupnewp.com, as well as on our Facebook page, facebook.com/whatsupnewp. That's going to do it for us today. We will chat with you next time.